Welcome to Level Up TV at levelupthegame.net and /Level Up TV on all our social platforms, Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. I'm Disrepute, as you can see, joined by Vor below me, represented by a crocodile today. How you doing, Vor?
Yeah, I'm doing good.
Doing good. I haven't spoken for a long time, of course.
A long time.
Very, very long time.
If you say so. I kind of recollect differently, but if you say so.
Do you? But of course, for the VOD viewers, it might have been quite a while.
Oh
Who
yeah,
knows?
certainly. Quite
Who
a while.
knows?
It's been ages, hasn't it?
Years, potentially, between watching VODs. So, here we are in EuroCup 26. We've been doing this weekly show a couple of times now. This is the third one. We kind of had a break week because there wasn't really anything going on because of the Adroitstand and all that. And then suddenly, in that next week, before this show, pretty much every game's got played, so we've got a lot to cover. So I suggest we don't spend too much time going over this, but basically we've had 16 games which have had a significant impact on the standings since the last show, where we were predicting certain favourites who've kind of slipped up. We've only got one team with a completely flawless record, that's Cito, although we also have a flawless series of wins, at least, for Ellie.
Yes.
Thanks to tonight's game. Some surprising performances, some dominating performances we've seen.
But what's more surprising is some of the shock results haven't just been close games. They've been shock results where the team that was perhaps not the favourite team on paper, they've dominated the favourite team. 2-0 on more than one occasion.
Really surprising. I mean, we saw that especially in the early weeks, but it's carried on throughout the competition. Some of the newer teams have really stepped up into this tournament, and the existing powerhouses found it pretty difficult, as we've seen tonight alone with the Lemmings Effect and 102 match. It has been an insanely competitive season thus far, and we have, at Level Up TV, so far covered every single map. And that might not seem like it when you see, for example, a Mammoth game with only one map played, but that's because they default the other, by the way. So we have covered every game so far. The VODs are available on our beautiful YouTube channel. The games that were tonight, the maps that tonight, I'll add them up later, but every other game is present there at the moment. Anyway, let's get on with it and start reviewing the matches that we haven't covered in the previous show, Vor.
Sure.
Starting off, Action League versus Team CZE. Any comments on that one?
Well, that was a game where we said that the Czechs probably needed to win to keep their hopes alive. As it turned out, they lost it. It was a close game, but Action, they recovered from their bad start to the EuroCup and took their maps fairly comfortably.
2-1 there on the Victory Grim Dungeons, Hidden Fortress General Place. Let's go on to the next match. The 16 matches to go through. We're just going to race through these. Plan B versus Team Mammoth. This was, a 2-1 victory, but we've seen some excellent performances by Plan B.
Well, at the time, this was, Plan B's first game. We hadn't seen them play before this. We had a feeling that they would be a very impressive team, and it certainly proved to be. 2-1 in their first game against Mammoth, it gave them a good start. And that was a team that we perhaps thought they might be quite equal with. 2-1, it looks quite close, but I was really impressed by Plan B. They played very well.
Moving on, Unknown versus Team Mammoth. Interesting, considering Unknown, one of the vast favourites, is a 2-1 scoreline, but they did actually, Unknown, default. Brand new Nimbus to the tournament.
They defaulted the map, and technically, from what we've seen in the rules, if they do that, then it should have actually been a 2-0 to Mammoth, but they got away with that, I guess.
Lowfly versus Deliberate Murder. A 2-0 victory to Lowfly. Now, this is one of the standout matches, perhaps, and it's put Deliberate Murder in a bit more of a predicament. And this is when we were starting to think Lowfly looked like dead certs to go through the Group 4.
Oh yeah, this was 102's first game after the LAN, where they disappointed, and to go 2-0 to Lowfly, it's shocking. It's not shocking necessarily that Lowfly won. It's just the manner in which it happened. A 2-0 against the potential favourites and the previous season winners. That was unexpected, but it was fully deserved. Lowfly, they played a great game. 102, they didn't seem quite right.
No, I mean one of those games where 102, I think we'll want to go back in time and really replay that one because it was so close. There was an opportunity for 102 to take that. I mean the score lines 143, 128, not a massive difference. 98-52 there, in
But
fact.
go back to the game. It's one of the significant games you can look at for how sometimes 102's power up play costs them in games. Dreadful Place, that was their home map against Low Fly. It was just a terrible performance on the power ups. If you're a home map, you expect to do so much better than that.
8-2 on the pickups, and then on Terminus, a map that no one's really used to, but it was so tight at the beginning, but then just totally overrun. I mean, what's that? 10 quads is it to six battlesuits to just four battlesuits for 102. So just kind of ridiculous level of dominance on the power-ups. That does move us on to the next match, Skywalkers versus Team Mammoth. Team Mammoth taking that one 2-0. I mean, that maybe at the moment is looking like the kind of match that isn't really going to have too much of an impact on the standings of the group overall, though.
No, I mean that was an opportunity perhaps for Sky to pick up a map win. It's turned out that Mama and Sky are the two weaker teams in the group, so if Sky were going to take a map, then they probably had to pick one up against Mama, but unfortunately weren't able to. But it's their first season in EuroCup, so they're only going to get better. Next time, we'll probably see them improve.
Okay, Plan B versus Sito. This was an opportunity. It was the first Sito game, and we'd heard a lot of rumours about how they'd been playing so badly in practice games. Plan B had been up and coming. They looked actually pretty impressive, but the actual score lines represented a pretty comfortable win for Sito in the end.
Yeah, they did. I mean, 51 frags on Purgatory. That's really a dominating performance. Zyrinx really had a great game on that one. I think, from what I can remember, it was a closer affair on Dreadful Place, but wasn't really reflected in the score line. But Sito,
165, 126 in the end.
yeah, Sito, looking very good.
Q50 our
2-0
standout
win.
boy.
Yeah, the 2-0 win over Plan B, might not have sounded like much before this competition started, but from what we've seen from Plan B so far, 2-0, that's quite impressive.
Yeah, Gentleman Club versus Low Flow. We then moved on to now. We weren't
Yeah,
going to.
here's where things start to get a bit bizarre, don't they? Because Low Fly, we saw them defeat. I mean, if it was the day before, wasn't it? It was the Sunday, and this was played on the Monday. On the Sunday, we see Low Fly take out 102 2-0, shock performance, and then Gentleman Club defeat Low Fly by the same result, 2-0.
2-0.
And
I
they
mean,
fully deserved it as well.
yeah, very close maps. 146, 130 on the first map, Dreadful Place, and then Purgatory, 148, 141. But that really was a bit of a shell shock to Low Fly. I think they were just a little bit psychologically unprepared for that one. I mean, having beat 102, you would expect to beat Gentleman Club.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. You've just taken out what is one of the favourites, but perhaps now that we've seen more games, they might be losing that tag of favourites.
I'm feeling pretty comfortable about the next game. Skywalkers versus Sito. Skywalkers, who've been, in some ways, the whipping boys of the group because they've lost every map. But at the same time, I think they've had impressive performances. But taking on Sito, finalists from last season, 179.99 on Hidden Fortress, and then it's 177, 149 on Limbus. Dominating performance again by the team I predicted to win, remember?
Yeah, and
Sito.
what might have been a dodgy prediction to start with, it's looking like a fairly good one.
Yeah.
And again, Zyrinx really performing brilliantly on both maps.
Yeah.
He's really, really dominating for his team at the moment. And if he can keep up that level of play, it's going to be very hard for anyone to compete with him. It's looking like.
Gentleman Club versus Action League, and this was an important game for each team to win, really. After the win over Lowfly, Gentleman Club were in a good position, and Action, of course, they needed a win as well. And Action League took that one 2-0.
Yeah, and we saw the kind of action performances we expected to see. They made a pretty slow start to the EuroCup, but really stepping it up in this game, and both maps taken very comfortably, in particular Dreadful Place. And Viam looking back to his best on Dreadful Place. Didn't have a great opening game, but really looking a strong player again now.
Skywalkers versus Plan B. Plan B taking that 2-0. Team Mammoth versus Play. Play, the first game, It was a few weeks delayed, really, wasn't it? That they started off, but did take out Mammoth 2-0. Mammoth be probably disappointed considering how close it was, 134 to 130 on Purgatory, which was Mammoth's map pick, and they are known to be a pretty strong team on that one. They
Yeah, I mean
did,
it's a good result in some ways because it's a strong map for play as well. I mean, Mammoth might have picked that map, but it's almost a kind of a home map as well for a team like Play. And coming off the back of their LAN win, only one difference in their lineup from that LAN and playing online, and that's quite a close game. Unfortunately, though, we didn't get to see a second map in that one because we were due to see a Terminus being played,
looking
but
forward to it.
Mammoth weren't really interested and they defaulted, which is kind of against the spirit of the competition,
It
but
really is.
unfortunate.
Drops them down in our estimations, I'm afraid.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame.
Anyway, we move on to the latest games then, and a game that you wanted to highlight especially for in what we would describe perhaps as key game, the key game of this stage, perhaps.
Yeah, and a
Plan
key
B
game
versus
in
Play.
Group A. Probably look at it maybe after we've gone through the other results, I guess, because some of what's going to be said is dependent on the other games that we know the results of.
Unknown versus Play was the following game. Unknown taking that 2-1. That was an interesting bout in itself, but has a lot to do with the map selected.
Yeah, I mean, it was the first test for Unknown, and they didn't come out of it entirely unscathed, did they?
They did
They're
indeed, losing Limbus.
Yeah, and that highlighted a weakness that they have on the new maps. They're having to eliminate Terminus every time because they have no familiarity with it at all. They are not looking comfortable on Limbus. I think that was perhaps Lincoln's first time playing it against Play, and as great a player as Lincoln is, he did not have a good game at all on Limbus.
Yeah, I mean, looking at they then played a fairly close game on Purgatory, and the third map, Grim Dungeons, was pretty close again. So they were lucky to get through that one in some ways, but I guess that just shows their level of ability. Despite almost by default losing the first map, they can come through and win the match. We then get on to another big game of this group stage, Unknown versus Sito, which some people would probably mask as potentially the group winners deciding game, especially after Unknown had defeated Play, who probably were one of the favourites to qualify through the group early on. And Sito took that 2-0 for.
Yeah, 2-0 against Unknown. That's very impressive, of course. It was a very close game on Hidden Fortress. But, it's kind of the risk you take of picking that map when you're Unknown. They know that that's a very strong map for Sito, but at the same time, when their team play isn't exactly firing on all cylinders, it's the kind of map that they perhaps need to play, but it just plays into the hands of Sito, really, and Zyrinx, really, again, as he always does, it seems, pulled out a great performance.
Yeah, I mean, we've got VODs of all these, of course, you can go and check them out. But that's definitely a game worth seeing. Both maps very close in the scorelines.
Yeah, and it did actually go down to kind of a last quad on Hidden Fortress where, unfortunately Lincoln, he didn't quite have the stack and he missed one shot, and when you don't have the stack as a quad, it's about one missed shot that can spell the end of you, and it did, and kind of that was the end of the map at that point.
Team CZE versus Lemmings Effect. This was really the start of Lemmings Effect. Impressive run from last night and then tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big gap between their first game that they played a couple of weeks ago now, 3 weeks ago, I think.
Against Gentleman Club.
Yeah, and playing this game, their second game. So we kind of wondered, would they lose some of the momentum they built from that first game? But it didn't turn out that way at all. They won Purgatory extremely comfortably by 70 frags. I mean, that's a hell of a margin of victory against a good organised team. And, Intervention was Czech's map pick, and again, that was fairly convincing.
Good practice as well for tonight's game, which is already up on the Clan Base site. It shows how hard the admins worked. Dozer straight up there. 102 versus Lemmings Effect, as we've just seen tonight, and Lemmings Effect beating the reigning champions 2-1, continuing their run.
Huge win for them. We've just seen that game, and incredibly impressive on all maps. Just a small mistake, I think, on Intervention was all that prevented them from potentially taking that game 2-0, but 2-1 still leaves us with a 100% record. only one map dropped so far in the competition, and they're looking very impressive.
Yeah, so let's go to play versus Plan B. Just discuss your key match of the week. I might even get up the VODs.
Yeah, I mean, I highlighted this as the key game of the week because Plan B had made a good start to this group, and it kind of meant that no longer were they competing with Skywalkers and Mammoth to see who would not finish in the lower part of the group. They were now looking to compete for qualification, so their game against Play was going to be an essential one because you kind of maybe put Sito and Unknown as two of the favourites in the group, and then it was going to be between Plan B and Play. So their clash was a vital one, and I have to say that Plan B came out and they performed immensely well,
Yeah,
better than I expected they would fare against Play. I could see them winning it, but I didn't see it going as a 2-0 victory for them.
it just seems like this season there's just a few teams that are just up and coming and really just up their level. And we saw some standout performances as well. I mean, across the board, their entire team was very strong. But Alteza, I mean, amazing quad runs. And
And Hypno was very impressive on both maps as well.
yeah, even Cerbos. I mean, the whole team across the board looking very powerful. And
And it's a real team as well. They play very well together. So that such a good chance. And what they have as well is they have someone in Alteza who can pull out some really impressive, important quad runs. It's a real huge advantage to have someone who regularly does good quad runs. And that was a huge difference in their game against Play. It was weird to see. In all the vital moments leading up to power ups, it was Plan B who kind of held their nerve and took the advantage because we saw Puri on some of the quads on Dreadful Place, and I hate to keep highlighting it because he's such a good player, but we saw him at times missing 6 rails in a row when it comes to defending and attacking the quad, and that's going to allow Plan B to really take advantage, and they certainly did.
yeah, it was just those moments that he couldn't help but keep mentioning it because Puri always gets himself in great positions. That's just what great players do.
And more often than not, he comes out and makes those shots.
And maybe the match could have turned around quite drastically if he'd hit them.
Well,
But
you look at Dreadful Place, score was 148 to 141, and on more than one occasion, Puri was missing some really vital shots that might have helped his team secure the quad. I mean, you never know what's going to happen if he does hit them. They might still not take the quads, it might not make any difference, but I can only imagine that he must be sitting there when he's missing those shots and thinking, how the hell am I missing these? Because they're not shots you would have expected him to miss. They had
yeah,
a really major impact on what was happening.
and then the second map as well. I mean, Limbus, that was pretty close in the end. Um, only
It was close, but I have to say that there was kind of too many moments for me when Play were not looking to push the advantage they had on the items at times, and I don't know. I think you always run the risk of losing a close game if you're not willing to take some risks. And their power up play again, they were kind of outclassed by Plan B when it came to the power ups, particularly the setups. Plan B, most of the time in that game, had the setup, and it was Play who were just not making effective attacks. We often saw them turning up late for quad, and not something you can do against a team that's organised and has a good setup.
again just emphasizing in every game I think we've seen the people that play better on the power ups, the people that actually turn up to the power ups, the people that get more power ups have won.
Yeah, that's been more prevalent this season than in recent times, I think.
I think it's because the level of Quake across the board has improved, and most teams are pretty close tactically on item grabs, etc. And if they're not getting the item grabs, they're getting the weapons to do the damage. And I think just across the board, the general map play is pretty close, so it's all down to the power-ups getting that big advantage now.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, having someone like Alteza, who we've seen make so many good quad runs recently, that's a real boon to any team. Not many teams have a standout power-up runner who regularly makes good runs.
But for play, ironically, that is normally Puri. It's just he missed the opportunities to do it in this match.
Yeah,
Pretty
and
unfortunate.
you have to say that leaves Play in a terrible position in the group. They now it's totally out of their hands now whether they qualify. They have to win all their remaining games, but that won't necessarily be enough to secure qualification. They're going to rely on other teams above them dropping games. And do we think Cito are going to drop any games at this stage? I don't think that's likely.
No, and
And
it's looking so good for Cito. I mean, they've beaten Plan B, Unknown, and Play, the top three teams below them. I mean, they're almost guaranteed to top the group now.
yeah, we still have Plan B versus Unknown, of course, and it almost probably won't matter what happens because play they have to play Sky. Probably expect them to win that, but they'd also then have to go and beat Cito. And in the form Cito are, I really think that leaves play in a really difficult situation.
Yeah, and then it goes to head anyway. So unless Plan B or Unknown slip up against um, whoever they have to play, I think Mama and Sky for each one of them. Unless they slip up against those, if I'm right in saying, then basically play are out of it. And it, as you say, it does rely on the other teams. So that's almost looks like a very likely dead cert top three there in Group A. And I'm looking at the groups now. Group B, though, is a little bit different. You do have Lemmings Effect at the top with 3 wins. It's not been updated, this. Actually, if I refresh it, it might be updated now. Yeah, there you go. 3 wins for Lemmings Effect. Action sitting in second, Low Fly in third with 2 wins apiece. Deliberate Murder, the champions, the previous season's champions, sitting in 4th position. 1 win, 2 losses, but they're still in with it. As our Gentleman Club, technically. I mean, it's only Czech Republic are out and Lemmings Effect are through. So those 4 teams in the middle, they do have a chance of getting through still for.
Yeah, I mean, Lemmings Effect dead certainty to go through at the stage. They do have 2 games left that. But they probably are certs to go through, aren't they?
Yeah, because whoever
have-
the other matches between other teams are going to take away points from each other effectively. So
Yeah.
they are certain to go through.
They do have 2 tough games remaining, though, Lemmings Effect. I mean, they've got to play Low Fly and Action in their remaining 2 games. So, they'll still have a big say in what happens in that group, even if they aren't going to be directly affected and lose out on qualification
They'll
themselves.
still want to top the group, of course, and they could miss out on that if
Oh
they
yeah,
don't
big
take
advantage, of
victory.
course. If you do top the group, you go straight into the semi-finals.
Yeah, that's a massive advantage, and Cito will be looking at securing that with their 2 remaining matches against Mammoth and Skywalker, so they were looking dead on certs for that. And Lemmings Effects will be wanting to repeat that, although they have a much harder route in terms of the positions of the teams they've got to play still. So, I mean, looking at that setup, I mean, who are we looking at going through in Group B? It's pretty much certain, I'd say, the top 3 for Group A, whatever order they're in, I'd say it looks pretty dead certain now.
Yeah,
Cito Plan B and
I
Unknown.
think we're already pretty sure on that. But for Group B, it's quite interesting because Action they certainly still have a chance, but they have some very tough games remaining. They have to play 102, who are going to have to win that game, so they're going to be totally up for that. But they also have to play Lemmings Effect as their final game, and we've already seen how impressive they are. So Action, despite being well positioned at the moment, they have 2 incredibly difficult games remaining.
Yeah, they could conceivably lose both of those, and then they might not be able to qualify. Who've Low Fly got to play still?
Both I still have to play
Well, the Lemmings Effect, don't they?
Lemmings Effect, yes, and Action. No, not Action.
Let's just click on them and see. Well, they've. Oh yeah, because they played a qualifier, didn't they?
They've got to play
Go
Team
through some-
CZE, haven't they?
Yeah. So CZE, if they look at that for a dead cert, that could be 3 wins. They could even beat Lemmings Effect. So I mean, it isn't out of the realms of possibility that Action might not qualify from this still. I mean,
We're going to lose a good team regardless, I
Yeah.
think.
we definitely are.
Because we're going to lose either one of Action, Low Fly, or 102.
Yeah, exactly. So
I mean, Gentleman Club is still in it, but they have some tough games themselves.
yeah.
Ones that they're certainly not going to be favourites to win.
Yeah, of course they've taken on Action and lost to Ellie as well. They've beat Low Fly, but they have 102 and the Czechs to play. So I mean, the 102 game's going to be pretty vital. You would imagine the Czechs, they'd consider that they should win that. Although the Czechs have kind of just been pretty unfortunate so far.
They've been kind of disappointing. I mean, they've not played that badly, but I kind of expected them to put up more of a showing because that's the team that was in the final of the Adroitsland, and online they're not really matching that level of performance.
No, it's just not really what we'd expect from them at all. Right, so I guess that's going over the table a bit. Just wanted to highlight, for example, we did this in the previous weeks, a player of the week for.
Which one are we doing first? Team of the week or player of the week?
Let's do actually team of the week. I've got some suggestions here. Sito, flawless start to the campaign, of course.
I think
Took out
really.
the three favourites of the group without dropping a map, including such an impressive victory against Unknown. They would potentially be one of the favourites. But then again, you kind of expect it from Sito.
Yeah, honestly, they're undoubtedly the team of the week for me. We were kind of wondering what we would see from them this season, but we've seen 3 games from them now, and 2 of them this week. Well, actually, all of them this week, hasn't it been?
Yeah.
And yeah, flawless start. No maps dropped. Not even looking really like dropping a map either. So undoubtedly they're the team of the week. And going into the next rounds and the ends of the group stages as well, it's not looking like it's going to be easy for any team to take them down.
The other team up for grabs, I guess, would be Lemmings Effect. And if you're going to divide it up, Group A, Team of the Week, Group B, it's pretty obvious who's who.
Yeah, I mean, they're close second, I guess, but I don't think you can match not dropping a single map.
No, I mean, no matter how established Sito are as a top team, they still didn't drop a map. And it's against the 3 teams that are just below them. It's not against the bottom teams.
Exactly.
Ever the more impressive. Right, your player of the week for. I mean, I could highlight a few performers, including Alteza, Products, Zyrinx, perhaps. Who are you going to pick?
Well, for me, I'm going to take into account, the surprise factor of this game,
Okay.
which was Gentleman Club versus Lowfly. So for his performance in that game, I'd definitely nominate Nons to be Player of the Week. I thought he was the difference between the 2 teams, and in such a close game, you really need that kind of player who can step up and make so many key plays for his team and just push them over the edge to victory.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everybody's going to have their own opinion, and some of the players that I mentioned definitely had standout performances. But Nons, I mean, if you go and watch that VOD, there's some incredible moments of skill and just excitement to watch his play. Really impressive. Really enjoyed it.
And there's no doubt his team were the underdogs in that game.
Definitely.
So, to be able to put in a performance that gives your team a victory, a 2-0 victory in a game you weren't expected to win, I thought that was certainly deserving of Player of the Week.
Can't disagree with that. Well, that takes us, Vor, into what's to come, and we're getting into the last stages of the game. So, got them up on here. Got some Sunday games. Got 4 games on Sunday, a Monday game, and 3 on Tuesday. So the Sunday games, Group A, we've got Mammoth versus Sito, Play versus Sky, and in Group B, Action versus 102, and Lemmings Effect versus Lowfly. A standout game out of any of them, Vor?
Standout game.
Action versus 102, I'd say.
I think so, because that's going to potentially be a straight knockout for who might end up in the next round.
I mean, if Action beat 102, pretty much 102 are out, aren't they? They'd be forced to have to be qualifying for 3rd place then. At best, Action would almost be guaranteed a top 2. And, well, it really depends on the Lemmings Effect versus Lowfly. That could really topsy-turvy the group even further. But that's a big game. Lemmings Effect versus Lowfly, potentially a big game, although if Lemmings Effect carry on the way they have, you'd kind of expect them to take that. But, we don't really know.
It's kind of a big game for Lowfly at the same time. Lemmings Effect, they're through. They probably want to try and ensure top place finish if they can.
You never want to lose a game,
but
do you?
it's a game Lowfly have to win to...
It's not like...
they don't have to win necessarily, but it's a game they're going to want to win. Otherwise it puts a lot of doubts on whether they will go through, depending on what happens in other games.
And we don't want to underestimate Lowfly. I mean, it's still an impressive performance to defeat Deliberate Murder. Even though we've seen Lemmings Effect do that as well. It's not like Deliberate Murder is suddenly a bad team. It was still an impressive victory. So that could be a very good game. So it's Group B really we're looking at there, because Mammoth versus Sito, I think we'd expect Sito to win. Play versus Skywalkers, we'd expect Play to win. It might be a bit harsh on Mammoth and Sky, but that's what you'd maybe expect. So Group B would be the focus that day. Moving on to the Monday game, Plan B versus Unknown. That's going to be an influencer in which One finishes in which position in Group A?
Yeah, and I don't think you can write off Plan B in that one at all. Not from what we've seen so far from both teams. Unknown, underperforming. Plan B performing well above expectations, perhaps. But they could target that as a game to say, look how good we are. We're going to beat unknown.
And then we move on to the final three games of all the groups, I think it is. On Tuesday, they're all forced for.
I think there are games missing, but that's what we've got to
Well,
go with.
whatever. The games that are up for grabs on those days. We've got Group A games, Sito versus Play. Depending how results flow, could affect. No, it's too late for Play, pretty much, we think. But, I mean, it could still, couldn't they technically still qualify? I can't remember what we just said there.
They can, I think, if other results go in their
That was
favour.
right, yeah. And
Like, I think you'd have to see Plan B lose to Unknown, or even Unknown losing could be enough. But I'm not sure. I have to. Can't definitely say either way.
and
I think there is a chance, but it's very slim.
either way, it's a pretty good match because Play have been unfortunate, really, that the other teams they've come up against haven't quite performed to get the wins, and they had opportunities to versus with Plan B, for example. So Play are a good team. Land victors, of course, pretty much, and that could be a test for Sito, and Sito will want to keep the momentum going. Group B,
Yeah,
yeah, go on.
I think it'd be a shame if Play can't end up taking a win against the best teams in the group. That'd be a really disappointing season for them.
And the
They've
Group B games: Lemmings Effect versus Action, and Gentleman Club versus the Czechs. Um,
going to be a
Lemmings
big
Effect
game.
Action,
Yeah, it's going to be a big game.
big game.
Depending on what happens, and it could be a game that Action have to win to qualify. Depending on what happens in other games.
Yeah, so a lot to look forward to in this clan-based EuroCup 26 season. And that's a wrap then for our coverage. Just remember, everybody, go and like us on Facebook /Level Up TV. It's a beautiful page with clouds at the moment. And remember to enter our competition for designing t-shirts. Go to our YouTube channel /Level Up TV at YouTube, and all the VODs of every game so far, every map has been included. A couple of them are demo cast and later on, not live at the time, but generally speaking, I didn't know what the results were anyway, so they're pretty exciting for me. But they're all there for reference. Go and check them out. Some
Yep,
very good
everything.
games.
Everything's archived and can be viewed at any time you want.
Forever until YouTube take us down.
Exactly.
And then Twitter to find out when we're going live, etc. at Level Up TV. Go and follow us there if you have Twitter. We've also done a useful post. Wintastic posted it today on ES Reality. If you use that site, no doubt all of you do anyway, being Quake fans. But coverage and VODs, bit of information about the competition, etc. And then all the VOD links, and you can just choose the maps you want to watch there, all listed down here, take you directly to the VOD. Obviously, it might give it away, depending how many maps there are, but it's kind of unfortunate, and you just have to live with it. Watch it live. What can I say? So thanks to Wintastic and Slowby as ever with the graphics and 3D imagery, and thanks to Vor for joining me on this night of Quake. I'm Disrepute, of course, and until Sunday when the next games are, good night.